Most people don't understand how you can acquire A, famous football club, and then B, turn it into a strong company with merely £100,000 capital. I mean, a lot of intelligent people have said, how on earth did you do that?
Claiming to be a lifelong fan, solicitor David Duff was given a seat on the Hibernian Football Club board in 1987.
It remains to me, even to this day, a mystery as to who exactly was David Duff. He's very much an enigmatic character in the history of Scottish football, not someone that is well known, not someone that even in a pub quiz you would necessarily come up with his name. And I think the enigma around him is, what was he really trying to achieve?
Duff attracted the attention of Conservative Party Treasurer-in-Waiting and tax exile David Rowland, who agreed to bankroll an acquisition of the Edinburgh club, but only if the Hibernian fans were also encouraged to fork out. With the use of bizarre TV advertising, the fans were gently persuaded to empty their pockets.
The most important person at Easter Road isn't Alec Miller, Peter Cormack, John Collins or Steve Archibald. It's you, Hibs fans. While the team plays its part in the park, we know our fans play theirs. There's no substitute for that.
The Hibs fans bought shares in huge numbers, and a profit of about £1.5 million found its way back to David Rowland. But hidden in the small print of the newly formed Hibernian plc was the acquisition of a loss-making restaurant chain trading in the south of England and owned by one of David Rowland's companies. Hemorrhaging massive debt, it dragged Hibs into receivership.
I think it pointed to some of the issues that we see later in Scottish football, where the club is not only overextending itself, but more importantly starting to get involved by a curious, circuitous route in other forms of business. And of course, these are very different businesses. They're not run in the same kind of way and whatever. And it ended up to Hibs spiralling into economic chaos, basically, and made them uniquely vulnerable to being taken over.
With the club on its knees, Duff was ordered to an emergency board meeting where he discovered there was to be a hostile takeover of Hibernian and learned the identity of the individual behind it.
David Rowland said, who is the worst person you could imagine that would bid for the company? And I speculated a few names that I won't repeat, but not the right one. And Jeremy kept saying, no, worse than that, the very worst person.
The Hearts chairman Wallace Mercer strode into an Edinburgh hotel this afternoon to announce the boldest takeover bid British football has ever heard.
This morning, Hearts Midlothian plc submitted an offer for the full issued share capital of Edinburgh Hibernian plc.
His idea of taking over Hibernian Football Club was totally a disastrous idea.
It shouldn't come as a cultural shock, the thought of putting together two teams who have been competitors for 100 years or so.
Disgraceful.
You going to go yourself?
Go where?
Go to a new club?
No danger, no danger.
Anybody who really understands football knows that you can't have Ying without Yang, you can't have Hearts without Hibs, you can't have Rangers without Celtic, and you must not ever effectively deprive people of their football loyalties. You can't do that.
Wallace Mercer's plan was to sell both of the valuable city centre club grounds and build a new all-seater stadium on the outskirts of Edinburgh. But unlike other businesses, most football clubs were still firmly rooted in strong communities. With their fans ready to be called upon as a last line of defence.
Keep your predator hands off Hibernian Football Club.
It was a very modern campaign in that sense, but it preceded social media, so it wasn't done through forums or anything like that. It was done through concerts, through raising money, through the buckets in the streets, through handouts, flyers and things like that.
More was at stake than just the club's history. Identity, trust in its owners, and the fans' dignity were also on the line. The community cared enough to believe it could make a difference as the campaign took hold.
They had a rally in Usher Hall, and he asked me to go along just to show support to the Hibs players, because that was the other thing that was involved. If the teams were to merge, at least one full squad of 30 odd players would have been lost. And I told the truth. I just felt that the city was big enough for both clubs. I didn't agree with it. I knew a lot of the lads in the Hearts dressing room didn't agree with it, and didn't feel it was right, which didn't go down too well with the chairman.
It was probably close to the club's darkest hour, and everybody who was part of Hands Off Hibs deserves great credit for the passion that they showed and the determination they showed to save the football club. And that's part of the recurring theme within football. Supporters are passionate about the football club and just want the best for the club.
The relentless campaigning piled pressure on David Duff and his business partners. At the very last moment, they held on to their shares and the deal fell through. Since the takeover campaign began, a simmering undercurrent of aggression stalked the city, aimed mostly at Wallace Mercer.
The fact of having a 24-hour guard in my family with the police, bricks through windows. I mean, really, it is so parochial, it is so short-sighted, and in the end, it really is quite sickening.
Good ball through to Foster, he's got Robertson in the middle. John Robertson!
Just weeks later, the pent-up anger boiled over, the fans displaying their rage at the bungled attempt to dismantle their club communities.
We have an incident on the field and several players having to race forward, fans invading the park.
The place was packed to the rafters and it was a horrible atmosphere. Hibs fans were going bananas, and rightly so. Hearts fans weren't too happy about it either. We were the antichrist at the time, we were the enemies.
Well, there have been chants throughout the game against the Hearts chairman Wallace Mercer, who's not here this afternoon. But no matter what's happened during the summer, there can be no excuse for these disgraceful scenes, these quite dreadful scenes.
Tensions erupted, and the police, inadequately prepared and completely misjudging the volatile atmosphere, lost control. The game was suspended several times, but the team struggled on until half-time, when John Robertson led Hearts off the pitch 3 goals ahead.
We came at half-time and in came the match commander, a couple of policemen, says, look, we fear another pitch invasion. We're going to basically say if you score another goal and Hibs fans invade, we may have to stop the game, we'll have to stop the game, so, if you can help it, don't score. And we're all looking stunned, thinking, some strange request. That, and he went out the door, Sandcars, yeah, no problem at all, thanks very much, yep, you know where he's coming from, we'll leave it at that, shut the door, and just says, nah, that ain't happening, guys.
And there in fact goes the final whistle.
Hibs lost the game, but claimed victory in their battle with Wallace Mercer. It wasn't the love of football that brought David Duff to Hibs, it was the lure of making money, and when that didn't happen, it was time to leave.
The biggest lesson is that you can't really trust anybody. And I just went away from it now.
David Duff did move away, and eventually into prison. Convicted of fraud in 1993 after swindling hundreds of thousands of pounds from numerous banks and building societies. An appropriate omen for the shape of things to come.